Perfect. So as many of you may already know, Leon's program that we have collaborated on is called Deep Coaching Intensive, or DCI. And we are delighted to share that Leon's very first program with us in April 2020 is fully fulfilled. We have 30 divine souls who are looking forward to embrace this great inner work for themselves and then take it back to their clients. And I'm truly grateful for this overwhelming response that we have received to your work, Leon. And I'm happy to continue this partnership with you. And we'll be opening registrations very soon for our second cohort, which is tentatively scheduled for October 26th, sorry, I'll repeat that, October 26th to November 1st, 2020. And for those of you who feel inspired to explore DCI with us, do fill in the registration on our website and we'll send you the link and all of that, but to express your interest for the second cohort. For those, we've received so many questions, Leon, and I've tried to weave it all into a nice story so that we can engage in a meaningful conversation today. I'm going to request everyone who's on this call right away is that in case any question comes up for you during the course of this session, please feel free to type it into the chat box and I will include it through the flow of today's conversation or use it probably in a follow-up session. But keep your questions coming. Leon enjoys them. I love putting them together in this format. Let's get started. Also, since a number of you on this call are Coach for Life graduates, a large majority of you, I'd say, I'd like to share that my understanding of Leon's work is that it builds on the brilliance that we have already learned with Peter from Coach for Life. And that supports an individual to take their mastery to a deeper level of understanding, both for yourself first, and that's important, and then for your client. It's also grounded in spirituality, which is what makes it hugely meaningful and special to me personally. And that's really what drives me to bring Leon's work to India professionally. I share this perspective both in response to Rajesh's question and also to set the stage for our next question, which I hope you're on the call, Debashri and Ramakrishna, who both asked the question as to what does deep coaching actually mean? And a follow-up to that, Leon, is how do you hold it as different, especially for people like myself and several others on this call who really consider themselves as transformational coaches? So over to you to respond to that, Leon. And I can't really hear you, Leon, so I'm just going to check if everyone could hear everything that I said. And Leon?
Let's see if this makes a difference. Does
Yes,
this make a difference?
Does. Perfect.
Something got switched in the sound system. I'm glad I saw that. Thanks for pointing it out. So where was I? I was saying, first of all, thank you to everybody for coming. We had a great number of people here in this space. And thank you as well, Amrita and Nidhi, for putting this together for all of us to talk about deep coaching and the work that we're doing. And I'm very excited, of course, to come to Mumbai in April to do the program with all of you. So the question that you were asking, what is deep coaching and how do I differentiate it for people who call themselves transformational coaches? That's a really big question. So I'll try to give it the nutshell answer, considering how many other questions there may be to talk about today. In fact, what is deep coaching? I've got a whole course called the DCI to answer that question. So I'll try to kind of squeeze it a little bit into a nutshell. But I think this question around, for people who see themselves as transformational coaches, kind of what does that mean? So one of the challenges in the coaching profession today is that there are no set definitions around what different types of coaching are, right? Anybody really can call themselves a transformational coach. And I've gone online myself when I was doing some research for my book, which is in part designed to sort of say, okay, so this is how we can look at transformational coaching. And I was noticing that some people define transformational coaching very differently than I define it. And they define it in ways that I would not even call transformational coaching. I would call them descriptions of all forms of coaching. So there is this challenge. And the other part of that is too, is that the word transformation, it's a wonderful word. We put that in front of leadership. I got transformational leadership or transformational coach or transforming organizations. So there's a lot of kind of current buzz around the word. So one of the things that we do at the center is we try to define what transformational coaching is. So in a nutshell, like kind of just squeezing it all down, the way that we define transformational coaching is that it's actually an ontological approach. So what that simply means is that we are looking at working in the realm of being when we talk about transformational work. So way of being, or even if you want to go a bit further beyond that into like levels of consciousness or states of consciousness and mind, that really is kind of the realm of transformational work. So I often say that the great transformational question is, who do I choose to be? Who do I choose to be? So it's a choice around being that we ask. And then what happens in the coaching conversation is that we're enabling people to not only explore what that way of being means for them, but to actually help them step into it. So they begin to more and more embody these ways of being that are desired by them. And that doesn't necessarily mean the person's transforming, but it does open the door to a kind of transformative level of change, because when you start to recognize what it takes to embody new ways of being, all that old pattern stuff that gets in the way will literally come up for attention. It's sort of saying, I'm still here, and until I am worked with, attended to, then you're not going to be able to fully embody that which you desire to embody. So that opens the door for kind of transformative change. So what deep coaching does, it goes even a little further than the question, who do I choose to be? Although it encompasses that question, because that's the core transformational question. We go into the other big question of life, which is the question of who am I? Like, who am I? Beyond all my ideas and thoughts, beyond my, what all the indicators told me about my personality, getting deep into ourselves and recognizing that there is something truly essential about who we are in this world. And then we can actually begin to not only embody, but actualize that as a reality. So deep coaching wants to take us even into that realm for those who are ready, to take us into that realm of truer self-exploration, so that we begin to reveal more of who we are, and we begin to express that more in our work, in our play, in our families, as we begin to embody, you might say, higher levels or higher ways of being that correspond to that recognition of who we are at our most essential level. So yeah, that's it in a kind of a little nutshell what deep coaching is. Yeah.
Sounds like a really tough nut to crack.
It takes time. It takes
yes.
time, right? But there's a lot of people in this world who are ready to go into this, like, okay, I've done the action taking, I've done all this, making plans and setting, schedules and taking this and doing that. And there comes a point where they just recognize that there is this deeper quality of being that rests within them. And they want to tap into that. They just want to begin to tap into that way of being and really spend more time at that essential level of self, because it qualitatively changes life experience.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
And it's interesting to ask you the next question, which is really from Mala. And her question is then that what is the sort of inner work that precedes such experiences? And how do you know that you're ready for it? What are the signs that inform you that, well, I'm ready to be a deep coach? And can anybody be a deep coach? All of that put together. And specific.
So the first question that said precedes those experiences, what experiences are we referring to?
So it's really the other end. Is there any inner work that as a coach I need to do before I get into this journey of wanting to be a deep coach?
Okay. No, it's not something that you get into before becoming a deep coach. The journey of the deep coach is a journey within the self. So one of the axioms that we work with in the course is that our transformation enables transformation. And where that comes from is this kind of reality that to become a transformational coach or a deep coach, that it takes a certain level of, let's say, maturity, of having walked life's path. So as we do the work for ourselves, as we start to learn what it means to kind of swim at the deep end within ourselves, to explore our own realm of being, to begin to understand what it means to kind of step into or embody new ways of being in this world, and then noticing what happens when I do. The paradigms begin to shift, and I experience life and self very differently as I begin to embody these different states of being. So as we do this work for ourselves, as we get closer to a more essential recognition of our own reality, we are then positioning ourselves to become the facilitators or coaches of that experience for others. So if we don't do this work, what happens is that people actually pick up on it. The fact is if you want to be a great transformational coach, you've got to commit to your own transformation. And if you're not, if you're just paying lip service to it, other people actually pick up on it, especially those people who are ready for these deeper dives, and they're really ready to step into these new ways of being that are sort of emerging within themselves. And then they're with a coach who calls themselves a transformational coach, but isn't necessarily really skilled at facilitating being level conversations or being level experiences because they haven't done the work for themselves. Yeah. So I would say you can't pay lip service to this. So yes, can anyone be a deep coach? Absolutely. Absolutely. But it's not something that is like, well, I just learned this technique and then I can be a deep coach, right? Or this skill or this model or this framework. The deep coach and even the great transformational coaches have all committed to their own inner journey, recognizing that their inner journey, their own transformation, is what becomes the great enabler of that for others.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get what you're saying. And as I hold it, is that coaching as a relationship needs to work for both the coach as well as for the client, right? And so how would a coach know that they are ready to take on this deep work?
That's a good question. That's a good question. This is one of the things that we learn on the transformational journey, is that there is something, let's call it a life force, call it whatever you want, let's call it a life force that is alive in us, that is a kind of guiding force, pilot, this lights us up from within. And what I have found is that all the people that really are ready to become great transformational coaches and deep coaches just feel this incredible urge within themselves to begin to support themselves and others in the kind of way that we're talking about here. It's almost like this strong impulse to not only know myself, but to be able to say, I am so deeply interested in supporting other people to connect with their most authentic self. And I want those people to be able to express that authentic self into the world. Now, what they're really saying is, this is what I want for me, because it is. But what happens is that it becomes an extension of that into the world. So that is one of the key signals, is just this sense that there is another way to engage with life, one that is more authentic, more real, more true to who we are, one that strips away all the cultural conditioning about how we should act and think and behave and succeed and do and earn and achieve, just begins to strip all that away. And just to notice that there's something extraordinarily vibrant within each of us that wants to come alive. So if you're feeling that, folks, like if you sense that as a potential for yourself in your relationships, in your work, then you're kind of knocking on the door of what it takes to be a deep coach and or a transformational coach. Yeah.
Yeah. And obviously there have been 30 people who've been knocking really hard, and that's why we're full on our first batch.
Yeah, it's happening all over the world. A lot of coaches are saying to me, I'm also just done with that transactional coaching, that, options, strategy, take action kind of coaching. It's been great. I've loved doing it, but I've got this feeling that there's a whole lot more that I can be doing with my clients, but I'm just not always sure what to do and how to navigate that, or even how to get there with my clients. And sometimes when I get to that point where something really great is happening, I kind of step back because I'm like, I don't know what to do. And I take it back in a more transactional method. So that's another kind of signal. It's just a sense that there's so much more that I feel I can be doing with my clients, but I'm not always sure how to navigate that.
Got it.
Yeah.
So let's move to the side of the client, and let me take the question that I know both of them are on this call, Aparna and Anuradha. And both are asking again similar questions. How will I know when a client is ready for a transformational journey? And what would be some of the signs or questions I could ask to ascertain if she or he is actually ready?
Right. Yeah, and this actually forms a significant piece of the deep coaching intensive, which is being able to discern the readiness of people for a deeper dive, right? Now, there are different levels of readiness. So we are learning also to discern what is that level. Like, are they ready to go to the deepest of the deep, or are they just on kind of beginning to explore this thing we're calling being level awareness, and just beginning to kind of dabble in that and get a sense of, well, what is it for me to really embody these kind of ways of being? So there's a whole spectrum of where people show up in terms of that readiness and what they're for. But that's a big part of our work, is to discern where people are at and then to meet them where they're at. Now, the question was around readiness for a transformational journey. Now, for me, the transformational journey is the person who's ready to really go through a profound period of self-exploration and change. Yeah. So we'll call that the transformational journey. And yes, there are some very clear signals of when a person is ready for that particular dive. And this is what deep coaching is very well positioned to meet. Now, one of the first signals, I won't share all of them, just share a couple here, but one of the first big signals is that they're asking themselves some pretty big questions about life. Questions like the great question, who am I? Yeah. And what is my purpose? And what am I here for? And is this all there is to life? And there's something in me that's so alive and wants to be expressed. And what is that? And these are really big questions. And to be honest, there are no easy answers to these questions. This is a journey into those answers. So the transactional coach will take them more as like, well, let's just answer that question and do something to help them determine their purpose, and like, that's your purpose, let's go do that and take some action towards that. But what we recognize in a transformational journey, that these answers have to emerge as the person goes within themselves and does the inner work that transformation demands, and it does demand some inner work. Then they begin to recognize the answers to these questions. They're kind of self-revealing as they do this work. So that's one really big signal. It's like some really big questions for which there are no easy answers. And very often then the accompanying signal is a sense of wanting to let go of no longer serving patterns. Like they've been being a certain way or behaving a certain way, thinking a certain way for a long time. And there's this overwhelming sense that what they're being called to step into or embody as a new way of living in the world, that these old patterns of thought, attitude, emotion are simply no longer serving. And the signal is kind of like, I'm so done with that. I'm so done with that. I'm so ready to be this authentic self. Now, I notice these have a grip. They're holding on tight. And it's not easy work to let them go. And sometimes it's really frustrating to just notice that they hang around, but I'm ready to do the work to release them. So that's another big signal. There's a number more, and we cover these in the course. But the deep coach is learning to determine, okay, so where is this person on their transformational journey? Are they deep into it? Because the people who are well into it are another kind of client. Not just the people at the beginning of the journey, but people who are well into it, who are reaching some real sticking points in their journey, who really are ready to throw in the towel and give up. There's another kind of point. And then there's further stages. So yeah, we recognize it all, and then we are able to meet them kind of where they're at. So, and again, that's a short version of a question I could talk about for 20 minutes. So forgive the short version. Yeah.
Yeah. Just knowing that it is part of the program of DCI, and it gets covered. So as a coach, all those who join will learn and will be equipped to understand these signs and know where to meet their client depending on where they are, right?
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
So Mino is chiming in with her interesting dialogue to a similar question, and her question is that how is this integrated in the coaching methodologies that one has learned, and how can one use it with a client who may not be really at a high level of awareness, but is still seeking some answers from within? And I know you alluded to that
Yeah.
as the different stages, but if you can
Right.
just address it briefly, it will be
Yeah.
great for me, no?
Well, that's just it, right? It's that there are different kind of clients who come in for coaching. And there's a lot of people out there who come to coaching who have no interest in transformational work. They're either in a kind of a more transactional stage, or they're in a developmental coaching stage, learning about themselves. But not everyone is ready for transformational work. There are people, though, who are, again, they're aware of something within themselves, that, as you said, the seeking answers from within piece, that may not be, really far along, let's say, in their growth and development in life, but are still aware that there's something kind of within them that hasn't been revealed or understood or explored the way that they would like. We could call them seekers, they're the seekers of life, and they come in. And the beautiful thing about the work that we're doing is that we're not interested in having people be anywhere other than where they're at. So our work is not to take people on a journey. That's not the work of the deep coach. What we're doing is we're accompanying them, we're partnering with them right where they're at. And we can bring our own level of awareness and our own level of understanding to their process right where they're at. And that's the perfect thing. So deep coaching works with, as all coaching methodologies, works with all the ICF competencies, because it is still very much a coaching methodology. But what we're doing is, with people who have lower levels of awareness, we're just simply helping them to understand what they do know about life. What is their truth? What are their beliefs that give rise to their experiences? What do they value? What are they seeking to learn and grow into? What are those ways of being that they might want to embody more of? For example, you might have a young person saying something like, well, I would really like to be more confident in my speaking at work or in public, wherever it might be. I'm just not very confident. I'd like to be more confident. So, here we have the request to be a more confident individual. So what does that look like to be confident, to embody confidence? So even if we deep coaches have this great understanding of life and this transformational journey and all of that, that's not relevant for this person here, who just is looking to begin to understand what embodiment of confidence is. Not a thought, not an intellectual idea. That's the difference, right? But to really be that. So we're helping facilitate this experience of self as confidence. So it's right where the person's at, asking for right what they're asking for, and helping them grow into through embodied experience. So we might say that's one way of differentiating deep coaching. The sessions are very interested in embodied experience, above all else, embodied experience.
Yeah. So I'm guessing that, and this is Preeti's question, is that the intensity of the coaching session probably is like enhanced through this approach. And to her question is that using this DCI approach, to what degree is the coach-coachee relationship not deepened but intensified and enhanced?
Yeah, that's a tough question for me to answer, because first of all, it's a question about degrees, and I can't give a degree. Like, I can't say it's 45% more enhanced.
It was tough for me to ask.
yeah, it's really like a tough question. And then what does enhanced mean? Okay, that's another tricky one. So what I'll do is just answer it from what I have experienced myself, because I used
Great.
to do transactional coaching. And I used to work in organizations for many years. I did leadership and managerial executive coaching. That's where I began. So I have a good sense of how it felt to be in relationship in transactional, developmental kind of relationships. But what happens in deep coaching is that there is a level of connection that we achieve with our clients that is unlike anything that you will have ever experienced before. You know, there is a book out, some of you will have heard of it, called Theory U, Otto Scharmer's work.
Yeah.
And Otto Scharmer, one part of it lists 4 levels of listening. The first 2 are kind of surface levels of listening. The third is called empathic listening, where, of course, means I can relate to what you are experiencing. I can understand your journey. I have that level of empathy. Now, all good coaching is able to enter into at least that 3rd level. Now, he's got a 4th level, though, and it's called generative listening. And generative listening really is, and this is kind of a simplification of it, but it's almost as though where 2 minds become as 1 mind. And there is then in that moment a dissolution of this idea of roles. I am coach and you are client. That starts to fall away as these 2 minds, 2 beings almost become as one in this coaching space or in this conversational space, right? Now, he just lists that 4th level, but I can assure folks, you know, that 4th level is a rare state of connection and conversation with another human being. It simply does not show up just like that in our daily conversations. For the most part, our conversations are level 1, level 2, kind of surface level stuff. And occasionally, when we do create a certain space and ask and invite people to really talk to us about their lives, they start to share and we become empathetic and we listen from that state. But to drop below that into that unified field, that is a mightily rare thing. And yet this is absolutely where deep coaching can go. And it's what we are learning to do, again, when the readiness of the client is there, because it's all dependent on the readiness of the client. It's 2 to tango to dance. But when the readiness of the client meets the capacity of the coach to create spaces in which these kinds of connections can occur, that's when the magic happens. Now, you can say it's enhanced or it's more intense. I just feel it as an incredible sense of connectivity and oneness that's like it's born of our heart, that just brings the 2 together. And look, folks, I've done this with people thousands of miles apart who in that moment, it's almost as though we are just one in the space. Like that's how it can feel. And it's extremely powerful. It is one of the most powerful accelerants of transformative growth that people can experience. And if you're able to create or facilitate these experiences for people, whole new paradigms of understanding of self and life just fall into place. It's like you see, perceive just completely differently. It's really magical. Yeah. So that's the best I can say to describe the potentials of a deep coaching space. Yeah.
In that moment that you were sharing with so passionately, it seemed to me that experience of that oneness. Yeah. So thank you so much for that. And I just loved the way that you expressed the readiness of the client meets the capabilities of the coach. How absolutely wonderful. And I'm so looking forward to this.
Yes.
But let me focus on what we're here to do and move to the next question, which is really from Subrat. I hope I've got your name right. And he offers an insight that he wants to share about the relevance of coaching in today's VUCA world. And what he shares, and I'm going to read it as he shared it, is that when the skills and experiences seem to get exhausted at such a fast pace in this ever-changing, complex business and global environment, how does DCI support leaders identify and nurture a mindset and an inherent skill to go within and leverage it in a conscious and consistent manner?
Yeah. I'm going to try to pull out the essence of that question, because in reality, I could again talk about this probably for half an hour
Yeah.
or more. It's a huge question around how we support leaders or any human being that's operating in a family or a community or a society or a country or a nation in which there is transformative change happening. So VUCA, it's kind of one kind of a condition in which leaders operate, but there are many different conditions in which they operate, in which this work has relevance. So I'll point out a couple of things, two things, because there's so many I could point out. So two things I'll just speak to. The first is that there is actually a dearth of understanding around what transformation as a personal process looks like. And what that means is that when transformation begins, well, that can be in a human being, or it can be in an organization, when true transformation is happening, there literally needs to be a kind of collapse of an old way of working, old systems, old ways of being, whatever. There's a kind of collapse that happens. And because people don't recognize that collapse and disintegration and sometimes kind of a destruction is an absolutely necessary and inherent condition in transformational change, they resist it, they push back at it, they try to do whatever they can to minimize the disruption and minimize the chaos and minimize the pain. So there's often a lot of resistance, a lot of fear, a lot of trepidation. What's happening? Why is this happening? I don't know what to do about it. This is not right because I'm very uncomfortable with all of this transformative change thing. So there's resistance and pushback, and everything's trying to, keep the walls from falling down. So what we want to do in deep coaching, and this has application in all aspects of life, not only personal growth, is that we come to recognize what the journey of transformation actually looks like. And so once coaches recognize it, then we start to normalize processes. So we normalize these things. We say, this is what happens in transformation. This is normal, natural, and the discomfort that you feel is normal and natural. It's going to happen. The discomfort, this discomfort is actually kind of a functional process of transformative change. So can we work with what's happening as opposed to resist what's happening? So if you're a leader in an organization, what would it look like for you to support transformative change, even when there is this kind of, very difficult, challenging disruption that starts to break things down? Because in that breakdown, that's when the new sprouts of potential begin to kind of pop up and arise, but it won't happen necessarily until things break down. So we have to have people, leaders, coaches who are comfortable, let's just say holding space. Let's use the term holding space, or creating spaces in which this kind of inner earthquake of change can actually happen, and not be swayed by it, not caught up in the drama by it, not worried and concerned that this is all wrong because it's shaking and it might collapse. Yeah. So the deep coach is actually positioning themselves to be that kind of holder of the space that allows transformative change to occur and normalizes it for the people around them, which is a really important aspect for those people who are fearing, concerned, worried about what's going on. All right, so that's a really big one. The other piece then is, what does it look like to hold space for transformative change as a leader or as a coach? What are the qualities of yourself?
Correct.
Right? So one of the things that I ask in the course, or we teach in the course, is really around personal presence. So what does it look like to be a transformative presence in the world? To be a transformative presence. Not to act like one or do the things of but to be that which supports transformative change. So a big part of our work, and this goes back to our transformation enables transformation, is that we are learning to be that which supports, enables transformative change. So there's qualities of being that we have to explore and begin to embody. So as leaders, can you imagine how valuable this is in an organization that's going to go through some of these VUCA experiences to be able to just hold the space for that, normalize it for people, and be this presence in which others can turn to and say, okay, so I need to talk this through or understand this. And that presence is itself supportive of all that's happening within the organization or the people that are there. So what are those qualities of being is one of the questions that we're asking. Yeah. So that's just a tip of the iceberg there.
Of
Hope that
course.
helped a little bit with the
Yeah.
question. Yeah. Others may have follow-up questions to some of this too. So I hope, folks, if you got questions, you're writing
Typing
them
it
in, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
That's great.
And I'll say you answered some parts of it, and yet since it's a question that's come through, I'm going to go ahead and ask it again. Is how does one integrate this concept in everyday life as an individual? And I know you spoke about that personal process a little while ago, but Meenu asked this question, and I think it's pertinent to my transformation enables transformation and all of that put together.
Correct. Yeah.
But if you can address that, please.
Yeah. So again, the form of the question matters. So here, the how do I do this? So I'll be straight out with people and tell you, I have no idea how you're going to do it. I have no idea how you're going to integrate this work into your life, right? What I do know is that the work is to integrate it into your life. That is the work. That is the work. And yet how that is done for each individual is very, very different. What I do know is this, that the deep coaching process of enabling people to explore ways of being, of encouraging them to begin to embody these ways of being, so beyond the intellectual choice, and to begin to really embody them. What I do know is that we start to shift our ways of being. And as we shift ways of being, there's a natural, inherent integration that goes along with it. And we don't have to worry about how it happens. That's the beautiful thing. There's a kind of mysterious, magical, mystical part that human beings do not yet understand about how consciousness itself shifts and is sustained within the human being. Okay? So this piece of how do I move into these new ways of being? How do I sustain them? That's a big question of transformational work. How do I sustain this? Like not just touch it once in a while in a coaching session, but be this in all ways. There is a natural integration that's going along as people go down this path. They don't have to worry too much about how it's happening, because some of it is just beyond what we can truly understand, how the brain, the mind, and the beingness of us work. But what we can do is continue to commit to the path and commit to the practices that we know support ourselves to step into and embody these new ways, or to even to heal aspects of ourselves that are no longer serving, to let go or to release. That whole aspect of letting go, those old behavioral patterns, never easy. They have a grip. You know, things that we've been living in from the day we were born to now that have held that grip are really hard to outwork. But the commitment to the path, the commitment to practices that elevate and accelerate your own personal and spiritual growth, the integration will come of its own accord. And bit by bit, you begin to experience life completely differently. It's extraordinary. It's extraordinary. And this is why, as a deep coach, I will be the first to say, I haven't a clue how it happens. I have no problem admitting I have no idea, really, truly, what's going on. It's too complex. Transcendental shifts in evolutionary understanding, it's just, you know, it's hard. So we just come back to this, what am I committed to doing today in this moment? To be that which I desire to be that which I know I am, right? Day by day, step by step. Yeah.
It looks like we'll be talking all the way till April just to get an answer to some of this.
Yeah, like the how-to questions, like I'm not really sure how it happens. Yeah.
I'm going to take one question from the chat box, and that's from Revati. And she's asking that beyond the tremendous inner longing, is being active on the spiritual path an advantage to participate in this program?
I don't know if it's an advantage to the program. People come into the program from all walks and who have all different either religious or philosophical or spiritual backgrounds and orientations. And they all take away something extraordinary from the course. That's right for them, right where they are. So I don't know if it's necessarily an advantage to enroll in the course. So for those of you who may not be on a spiritual journey, it's okay. The deep coaching work does not require anything like that. But what it might do, like if you are on a spiritual path, on a spiritual journey, like I certainly am, and I know that all of us are, deep coaching does rest on a presumption. And that presumption is that we are spiritual beings at the core. So we might say we're human beings spiritual beings having a human experience kind of thing. Right? And because of that, we are recognizing that when we coach a person, we coach the totality of that person, which means body, mind, spirit, soul are all considered and recognized in that human being. Now, they may not recognize it in themselves, and that's okay. We don't have any requirement that a person is themselves speaking to spirit or spirituality or soul or heart. It doesn't matter. We meet people where they're at. But for ourselves as deep coaches, noticing that we are, spiritual beings having this very human experience, and that we're coaching the totality of another human being, that provides its own a different kind of way of perceiving the people that we're working with and perceiving ourselves. And what does seem to be true is that as people progress along their transformative journey, those who are going even further into the question of, who am I at my core, are also beginning to recognize their spiritual nature, that those are one and the same. Yeah. People at the beginning of their transformational journey don't necessarily recognize that. But those who are coming kind of through the fire, so to speak, of transformation are beginning to recognize it. So if that's there for you, then it's wonderful because it will fit right in with what we're doing. But for those of you who aren't there, it doesn't preclude in any way. There is in this work something for all. Yeah.
And I'm going to take the liberty to share that it's my belief that we're all on a spiritual path. We're just slightly aware of it, not aware of it, or very aware of it. That's all. Yeah. And I think that's the invitation. At least that's how I hold this work and everything that I've read and heard and interacted with you and all the work that we do. It's an invitation to meet your own spiritual nature. So I would say to Revati that and to everybody else that you're drawn to this work because there is that deep longingness to meet your own spiritual nature and operate from that space. And that's how I hold it, Leon. Sorry, yeah. I just couldn't help but sharing it.
That's excellent. Yeah, that's it. It's good to hear how other people are perceiving it and experiencing it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Super. So I'm going to ask a few more questions again that have come through from the chat box, and that's really about are there any aspects of a client that can get in the way of them going on a transformational journey?
Yes.
And likewise, the flip of it, are there any aspects of the coach that come in the way of them supporting somebody on a transformational journey?
Yeah. Yeah, clients can definitely get in their own way.
Like we all do.
Do it all the time. The time. In fact, getting in our own way is the primary barrier. But one of the main aspects, there are a few, but one of the main ones is actually fear. It's fear. So as I mentioned earlier, like the big questions, right? The big questions like, who am I, or what's my purpose, or what is life all about? It also brings up other questions like, what is this thing in me that's calling me forward? What is it? Why do I feel this way? No one else around me seems to be responding hearing these kind of inner things, and they're all just on their Facebook and they're just chatting and they're driving their cars and going on holidays. And I have this thing going on in me. What is that? So there's a lot of fear and trepidation around it. Also, what they begin to see is that the way that they have been living may not be aligned to who they are at the deeper levels, but they've been living that way for a long time. They may have jobs that have been careers that have been built around it. They may have families and expectations built around it. And so there can be a lot of fear and trepidation, like, oh my goodness, like, what if I say yes to this journey? What'll happen to me? Like, what do people think of me if I say yes to this? You know, what do my family say? My friends will say, they all think I'm crazy. So all of these fear thoughts that arise when they begin to perceive that this is a journey which has no clear destination, a journey that they've never been on before, that's completely non-linear. Like, that's the thing, eh? It's non-linear, folks. It doesn't go from A to B. That's the transactional way, right? It's a non-linear, multi-dimensional, dynamic system of change. And they look at that and they just see this abyss. and that causes fear. So what happens is they pull back. They will either resist it, like, no way am I going down that path, or they will pull back and they will just kind of try to live in this world that they know, not adventure into that unknown world, but live in the world that they know, the world where everything is ordered and organized, where they understand what's expected of them and there are responsibilities and how to pay the bills and make sure everybody is cared for and all of that world. They know that world, so they'll pull back into it. And so that gets in the way. That's the biggest thing that gets in the way, is fear. So this is what I love about deep coaching, is that we can, for these people, normalize it. And we become a kind of way shower, like a way shower, the one who shows the way. Because our transformation enables transformation, because we have walked the path. It doesn't mean we're fully transformed. I don't even know what that means, but we have walked this path. And because we've walked the path, people can turn to us and say, hey, there's one who seems to know, who seems to be calm and peaceful in the face of what I fear. So we can help people get over what gets in their own way. And some people like to dabble, like I call dabbling. They have one foot in the one world and one foot in the other, which is, you know, every once in a while I'll read a book on spirituality, or I'll go to a workshop, or I'll take a nice retreat, but I'm not really committing to my own transformation, because, man, that's just way too dark and sticky, and I don't know what that means. And no, but, you know, it's nice to read a book once in a while. So that's it. That's the biggest one. They get in their own way because of fear, of what it means to journey. Right? Yeah. Your other question was about the coach, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So the biggest thing the coach can do, if you totally want to get in the way of your client's transformation, come in with an agenda. Right? Just come in with an agenda for them. Just subtly, not too overtly, just subtly tell them how they should think, how they should act, what they should do, how they should perceive, how they should feel. Like, just subtly drop all of that into your coaching space and just have this very subtle agenda for them. And guess what? That'll totally get in the way. Now, the reason I say that is because people who are on this transformational path are possibly, for the very first time in their life, defining for themselves, what is good, right, and real. For themselves. They are the great seekers. Now, to become a great seeker, you have to become very vulnerable. You have to be willing to say, I don't know. And everything that I have learned may just be false and distorted and not true, and be willing to, like, just let it all go. Like, there's a huge vulnerability in the truth seeker. Huge. And this truth-seeking status of vulnerability, combined with the fact that they are asking these questions of life and they don't have answers, means that it's a very, very fertile ground for the coach to become the guru and to just begin to tell the person, think this way, act this way, do these things, and you will find your way to where you want to be. But what happens there is that all we're doing is we're replacing the parent who's conditioning a child with the guru who's conditioning a client. And what we're doing in transformation is actually trying to support people to self-define their own truths, to really, for the first time possibly in their own life, to say, I know what I've been taught. I know what all the world has to say about this thing. But I want to know what I truly believe and feel and what is right and true and real for me. And so we can get in the way of our clients' transformation when we subtly or not subtly impose ways to think or act or feel or perceive into a very vulnerable state of being. Yeah. Our agendas. And we all have them. We all have them. And as I write in the book, I write, agendas are the shadow side of caring. Agendas are the shadow side of caring, because agendas come from, I care about you and you're suffering, you're hurting, you're in discomfort, you're in despair, you don't know what's going on in your life. And I want to offer you comfort and solution and ways forward. And so where does it come from? It comes from care, but it's absolutely the shadow side of care.
There's so many thoughts going on in my mind from everything that you shared, but I'm going to pause that
Okay.
and definitely come back to you on it one-on-one on some of them for sure. But let me just take, I think we're 8 minutes to close, but and I want to take Lewis's question. This whole conversation around spirituality seems to have piqued a lot of interest. And his question is that if someone doesn't believe in spirituality or believes that spirituality doesn't even exist, is this program not meant for them?
No, I think that it's again, it depends on coach or client. A coach or client. Okay, so I'll take it from the client perspective first of all. Deep coaching has no vested interest in where any human being is at in their life. None. Zero. Because our role is only to recognize where that human being is at and to listen into what there is a readiness for them as far as that kind of change or evolutionary process that they're ready to embark on. That's it. So we have no vested interest in what our clients choose to believe or not. So any human being can come to a deep coach, right? Any human being. And the good deep coaches, see, like for me, a great coach has the ability to coach transactionally, developmentally, and transformationally. So a really good coach is not just locked into one style of coaching. They've got a full capacity to coach, which means that no matter where a person is at, you're kind of really able to meet them. But the deep coach is able to also go to the deepest end, which from my experience, very few coaches are able to go there. So you've got the capacity to, if they're ready to go there or not, but we have no vested interest on where they're at, whether they have spiritual beliefs or they're atheists, it's irrelevant. What is that level of being within themselves that they are ready to open to, explore, and even embody? And even atheists have ways of being or choices of being. I choose to be more assertive. I choose to be more confident. I choose to be more alive. I choose to be more loving. I choose to be more caring, more compassionate, more joyful. I mean, you can name it, right? All human beings have these qualities that they desire to fulfill, whether they believe in spirit or spirituality. So you can see transformational work is for everybody. And therefore, as a deep coach, the course is for everybody who wants to learn how to support being level change. So one of the things that is very important for me as a deep coach is that I am not here to impose, as I mentioned, anything about my own personal beliefs of spirit or spirituality upon anybody. Yeah. Now, the deep coaching work does, as I mentioned, work with this one presumption that we are spiritual beings having a human experience. And if you absolutely deny that, say that's absolutely not true whatsoever, then yes, you're going to have some challenge working with the deep coaching approach as an approach, because we're resting it on this one singular presumption. But beyond that, if you're able to say, yeah, there's probably some element of spirit here, then deep coaching just opens its door for you, no matter what you believe about spirit or spirituality. There's no conditions needed, and none will be imposed upon you. Yeah. I hope that answered the question. Yeah.
I hope it did too. and like I say, is that the work that we all do actually as coaches is just to open the door. The choice to walk in or not is completely dependent on the client,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah.
You were saying something, Leon?
No, that's fine.
Yeah.
A thought came and it went.
All right. Okay. So with that, really, we've come to the end of today's session.
Great.
Thank you so much for patiently answering such deep questions in the manner that you did. I'm sure it has inspired a number of more people to engage and explore with this work. We're really looking forward on behalf of all 30 of us who've registered and waiting for you to come to India. Really looking forward to this program. And for all the others, there's definitely going to be a rerun of this. And so, join on when the time's right for you. And we'll be there. Right. So thank you so much, Leon.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. Thank you, everyone, for coming and staying with us through this whole conversation. It's good to have you here. And if you do have more questions, I always invite them. I'm sure Amrita too will be happy to field your questions. Send them an email and be happy to keep the conversation going. Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Thank you then. I'm going to just unmute everyone so that you can say your goodbyes. I'm going to pause the recording.
Right. Turn your cameras on and say good night to everyone.